Lino, Director of FAIR and GSI in Darmstadt, and he will talk about international research infrastructure as factories of opportunities. So we are eager to hear about opportunities.
Since many of the people in the audience are good friends, I can start with a disclaimer that unfortunately, this meeting falls into the middle of a tsunami of events linked largely to the ongoing war. And it's been very, very difficult to squeeze any time even to come. And in fact, I flew this morning and ran away in the afternoon. Let me try to tell you a bit of the things that I would like to say. We are, and you had this morning CERN, now you have us, big science, international. And of course, we believe that they are unique opportunities for knowledge, for expanding what we, in the end, curiosity-driven. We want to know more about the universe. But they advance technologies, and in particular technologies of enormous societal impact, and we will see a few examples of that. But also, and this is the thing that I will repeat more than once, these are tools for the development of the next generation of scientists and engineers. They are, we use often this term, we are talent factories, in the sense that we are places that are meant as user facilities, as facilities that address not scientists which are their employees, but the scientists which come from everywhere, and that offer opportunities for the young people to develop what their capabilities are. And they are all based on international cooperation, which is indispensable not so much for the monetary aspect, at least, for example, in our case, quite frankly, it is Germany who carries most of the monetary load, but for the cultural and for the scientific know-how input, this is where it is essential to be international, to work with others. Now, why, and I like to go back always to what happened a few centuries ago when Galileo did what we think is a fundamental revolution. And that is, he used a telescope which he had not invented, but he realized that that instrument would be a vehicle for knowledge, that looking at things through an instrument would provide as valuable and reliable knowledge as to look at them with your own eyes. At the time, that was far from being obvious. The fact that what you would see through an instrument, for us, it's completely obvious. But at the time, to think that you would acquire reliable knowledge through looking through an instrument was a complete revolution. And then, since then, things continued because, well, when you look at things, you shed light, and the size of the object that you want to observe is directly linked to the energy of the photons that you're using, in the case of photons. And this, of course, means that the more you want to go to details, the more you need to go to higher energies. And so in the decades after decade after decade, instruments have become bigger and bigger and bigger, and both in the direction of instruments to observe the infinitely small, the large accelerators, and to the ones which look into the universe, from telescopes now to instruments to observe gravitational waves and so on. So at some point we are at extreme instruments, objects like the LIGO Observatory, like the LHC, that we have now as somehow, in quote, the standard of large instruments for science. And of course, these are the usual references, Geneva Airport, over 10 kilometers in size and with thousands of people involved. And of course, then I refer to our own baby. This is FAIR to the right, which is an international laboratory with these countries as shareholders. And up on the left is GSI, which is on the opposite, a German laboratory, a Helmholtz Center, with some complexity in the synergy between the two that has been improved dramatically, let's say, 6 years ago by unifying the management of the two laboratories. So I am director of both. This, of course, helps the synergy, makes my life impossible because we have still two companies, very different, and two reporting lines and so on, which then managed internally to work together very well because at this point, prioritization and everything is done by one management, so that's easy then. But all what goes to our relation to give an example, I came this morning because yesterday I had the Auschwitz-Rat of GSI, which is a very German institution. Next week I have the Council of FAIR, which is an international body, and you continue to shuttle between these. It was born, FAIR, in 2010 with an intergovernmental convention, but, and this remains again as a duality of issues, as a private company of German law. So we are owned by international shareholders, but the company is a German company from the legal point of view. This has, of course, a number of implications. You can easily imagine today we are subject to complex interplay between our being a German company, which has to satisfy the sanctions that the German government imposes on Russia. And, okay, no, I wasn't there, I didn't touch. And on the other hand, the international nature of the company with 20% ownership of Russia, because these in orange are the owners, and in particular, Russia owns 20% of the company. So this, as you can imagine, now creates a delicate situation that we try to handle. But as is true for CERN and for many other laboratories of this type, the user community spans over a much larger map, the one of the blue countries here, through a very, very extended network of bilateral agreements and of the multilateral agreements that are around every single experiment in our field. Practically, apart from very few exceptions, all experiments are free associations regulated by their own self-written rules of independent institutions from all over the world. And of course, you can see why the interplay is so tight, is because the accelerator complex will be one accelerator complex in which the beams from GSI will feed the FAIR accelerators. And I will not tell you anything about the way these are optimized. Well, just one word. The word that drives the whole design here is intensity, not energy. In the tunnel of SIS-100, one could accommodate easily an accelerator of 4 times that energy. The driver is intensity, and that brings to a completely different type of optimization. If you look at the magnet cycle at CERN, you will see the magnets slowly going up then staying up for a long time at the maximum energy, and then you go down. Ours go at 50 hertz, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, because we throw bullets one after the other to reach the large intensity. So it's completely different the way they are designed. And it's a big construction, 2 million cubic meters of soil to move, 600,000 cubic meters of concrete, 65,000 tons of steel, and this tells you also some of the troubles that we are going on today because the cost of steel is more than doubled recently. So if you have to buy 65,000 tons of it, then you feel the pain. But civil construction is going very well. This is now the same picture, and you cannot really tell, but I explain to you. This, for example, is the ring of the main accelerator, which was at some point a trench, 20 meter deep, 20 meter wide. Then the construction took place, and then it's been recovered, and then one by one all the other buildings. I don't waste your time for that. The important part is that there are, because of the nature, again, of this type of accelerator, that is in reality a complex of different accelerators which have different functions and different optimizations, is to have very many different components. It's not a large number of identical pieces, but very many different components, which, by the way, are arriving from everywhere and being stored. And this is a point which is important for our discussion today. In getting together, the countries which own the laboratory decided that their contributions would not be money, would not be checks, but would be in kind. They would build parts of the machine in their own countries. This, of course, has a number of advantages. Governments like to give money to national industry, so it is easier to motivate a country to give money. And in fact, this has then been followed by a number of other international facilities. Excel, the ESS, CTA, and others all followed this in-kind model, with a certain number of issues, though, because an in-kind model transfers the cost, risks, and responsibilities on the one who takes the in-kind responsibility. The commitment is for a deliverable, is not for a certain amount of money, which is given a value from the cost book, but in some sense it is independent of what it will actually cost to make. So you can imagine that long-term this creates unhappiness in countries which find themselves having to produce things that at that point don't cost anymore what they were supposed to, and difficulties of various kinds. But on the other hand, it can be an extraordinary opportunity for a country if they play it smart. And I think that the ones that played it smartest in our case were the Slovenians. Slovenia is a small country which has as big a quota in FAIR as much bigger ones. And that was completely driven by the existence of national industry that would be interested in realizing components, which they did brilliantly. And actually, at a presentation I stole, this is, I don't have the, it's a photograph of, yeah, I don't have the slide. It's a photograph of a presentation that the director of COSILAB gave in front of their own minister, saying, look, you gave us about 20 millions to participate in FAIR. We, at the end, will pay you 45 millions of taxes. So we've been a bargain for you. You're actually making money out of participating into this project. And in following pages, he was actually giving a breakdown that actually that's what they do. They pay 45 millions of taxes out of the 20 million of funding that they get for to work with us and the government. So this has been what every country would have wanted for their participation. We put some in-kind contribution that allows industry to develop products that they are sold elsewhere, and we make money, but not only money. You know that governments are very happy in particular of making jobs. So they created a lot of jobs. This, of course, is a byproduct, which for many of us is a primary product, brings together countries to talk and to work together, and therefore is a vehicle of dialogue and peace. And this is why we are all very much torn, and it's a very painful situation now, while on one side we have a commitment to apply sanctions, to take our load in contrasting the actions of the Russian government. On the other, we feel we are losing our role of being a bridge, even in the worst situations between countries which are at odds with one another. It's a very difficult moment, I think, for science, this one. And I personally feel always very uneasy about the fact that we are, in some sense, abandoning colleagues which, on the opposite, are fighting against the government actions in Russia, and that by being cut off the rest of the world become isolated and lose a lot of their leverage towards the government. So it's difficult. It is clear that we cannot be indifferent. It's an unprecedented situation. At the same time, science should be able to do more and better than just. And I like to go back to my old days when we were starting the ALICE experiment at CERN to remind how even very, very simple things required the convergence of know-how and technologies from many, many sides. This was, in some sense, the simplest element. It was the absorber for the hadrons. And you can see it here being built with a steel cone from Finland, aluminum from Armenia, tungsten components from China. Support was made in Italy. The polyethylene parts were made in Italy. Graphite and steel parts were made in India. Lead part was made in England. The overall engineering was done in France, and the design of and optimization was done in Russia. This is typical of essentially everything which goes into our experiments. And I just liked always to remember this because it was particularly evident. But what we run is really a true so-called glocal system in which there is this continuous exchange between the world dimension and the local dimension. In Institute X, in university in India, one develops ideas, develops scientific ingredients that define the design. Then this is put together with the others. It's optimized. That results into specifications that one has to match. Typically, for experiments of this kind, this is not met by any existing technology, so one has to go back and develop the technology. There is a phase of development of technology, and then, which is again done locally by the various institutions, which then allows also the transfer to local industry. This is a very important moment of when there is the technology development at home, and then they are put back together to create the overall experiments, which is run together, but then again, analysis is done locally in the various institutions. So you have this continuous interplay between the local aspect of science done in each one of the institutions and the global aspect. And I honestly think that this has been and continues to be an extraordinary instrument against brain. Because if I am in Mumbai and I know that I can do the same level of science that I would do if I would sit at Harvard, because in the end we are both participating in an experiment in an international laboratory and have access to the same frontier science, well, I will weigh my motivations. As you all know, what drives a scientist is not money. is the desire to do good science. So they typically don't care that the salary at home will be lower than the salary somewhere else. They do care if being home does not give them the opportunity to access the frontier science. That motivates to go. But if you have a structure which allows you to have full access to world-class science from home, then your motivation is, okay, I have 10 minutes, I have no idea how long it will take. So why do we do all this? We do all this it's still guided by passion, it's still guided by the fundamental human desire to know. There's something we do not know, we want to know it, and that drives our efforts. In the end, that's the real motivation. Then we always, when we talk to our governments, we tell them all about all the other nice things that we can do, but the real motive is, in the end, to discover things. And for example, at FAIR, I'll tell you just in one slide, what we do, we bring, which we call bringing the universe to the lab, in the sense that there are a number of key processes in the evolution of the universe that are nuclear processes, starting from the burning of the sun, and all the way to neutron star mergers. And it is possible to reproduce the conditions of these processes in the laboratory and provide then input to the theories that drive the understanding of, and this is really a triangle, of the observational experiments. There is, for example, at the moment, an enormous virtuous loop between the informations which come from gravitational waves, theoretical physics, and the information that you can get in the laboratory from the behavior of nuclear matter at the densities and of neutron stars, and then the processes which follow the mergers. And this leads you to understanding things like where are the heavy elements created, or in reality, there are many, many processes where we lack information. There is an experiment which we are doing exactly now, which already 40 years ago was indicated by Fowler in his Nobel Prize lecture as a very important process that is the merger of carbon and helium to make oxygen. In the end, we are made of carbon and oxygen. These are the building blocks of life. We have an idea that they are made in the late stages of development of certain types of stars. Still, you want to measure the cross-section for the process, and it took 40 years to get there because it's a difficult one to measure. And so on and so forth. What is the structure inside of matter inside the planets, and so on. I'll come back to, maybe I just say a word. Another thing which is very important, I mean, our space programs are now focusing more and more on long trips, particularly to Mars, for example. There, radiation effects on materials, but especially on humans, become the most critical factor of success. The probability, if you do nothing, the probability of developing cancer on the way to Mars is 10%, which is extremely high. You can imagine your crew would not have an easy life. And therefore, the European Space Agency has identified us as their ground-based laboratory for radiation studies. And we are carrying a specific program exactly to study the effect and how to mitigate the effects of radiation in space. For that, one develops all sorts of technologies. I'm sure that if you heard the presentation by Søren, how important it is to have accelerators as a strategic tool in society. There are a handful of accelerators which are used for research. Everything else is used for therapy, for producing isotopes for medicine, is produced for materials, and so on and so forth. There are many thousands, 2,000 or 3,000, I think 30,000 something accelerators in use in the world, and only a handful are used in physics laboratories, but it is in the accelerator laboratories that one does a development of new ideas and new technologies, and especially develops the know-how to run and design these things. So it is essential that this continues. And of course, there's lots of, we lost another photo. We were looking with the assistant. Anyway, it's ugly enough also with half photo. The so-called green cube, there is a lot of IT developments. This type of science produces enormous amount of data. Enormous amount of data means enormous amount of computing power. Then this computing power, of course, becomes a cost driver, and therefore you want to cut it down. And that you do by making your software smarter. You do it by developing different models of use of the computing, and also developing hardware. This is a hardware development of which we are very proud. It's one of the most energy efficient computer centers worldwide, and that's why it's called the Green Cube. It only uses 7% of the total power to cool down the computers, which has been for a while a world record. Now it's challenged, and many other things. We are working on nuclear clocks, for example. This is an interesting thing. Atomic clocks are already exceedingly performant, yet a nuclear clock could be, especially from the point of view of stability and so on, 100 times better. And you might wonder, why the hell do we need to be 100 times better than something which is already so precise? Then open your GPS and look at the precision. The precision is determined by time measurement. And imagine now of landing an airplane on the GPS. That's a precision of a few meters. You don't want to land an airplane with that. You want a precision of a few centimeters. And also for self-driving vehicles and so on. You want precisions which are 100 times better. And for that, you need nuclear physics. And the one thing that we are, though, extremely proud of is to have pioneered the treatment of cancer with nuclear beams. I heard that you have had a presentation from CNAO, so you know everything about this. I am proud of the fact that this was pioneered at GSI, and is been a development that brought hundreds of patients to be treated on campus. For there's been a period in history in which the laboratory had really a clinical function. And it's something which continues to progress dramatically everywhere. These are plots of this year. No, of last year, sorry. Mostly of last year. Flash. Flash is when you increase the intensity such that you can give your radiation dose in less than a second instead of 1.5 minutes typically, so 100, 200 times faster. It has been observed that this leads to much lower effects on the healthy tissues and much lower metastasis of the cancer. This is brand new study. This was done for the first time with ions last year. This is a fantastic new thing which our head of biophysics, Marco Durante, which is a genius, has developed. It's not for treatment, but for the development of the techniques. You would really want to see what you are actually doing. And if you use a radioactive beam, instead of using carbon, you use a radioactive carbon, you can do PET in real time while you are irradiating. And so this is got an ERC grant specifically to develop this. So these are images, real-time images of what you are doing while you are irradiating. Of course, you will not do this for normal patient, but to develop the technique, this is a very important tool, and many other things. I mean, we work with another things that people develop are, for example, sensors for viruses made on the basis of special development of membranes, but I will not. And again, I repeat always, the talent factory, the thing that we give to humanity, which is the most valuable, is the fact that we have given opportunities of developing their talent to young people. We have more than 300 PhD students in the laboratory, for example, and this is just to give a measure of the size of the process. So we have big economic responsibilities. We cost a lot, and this, unfortunately, is something that governments look at. One of the motivations in the cancellation of the SSC was that they were not seen that to have adequate return on investment. This is often a misunderstanding, but due to the way people calculate these returns, but it's something that we have to watch. We have political responsibility. There are great societal challenges, and we cannot avoid providing our part of response. And this is done, this book developed, this report by Technopolis about the role and added value of large-scale facilities that basically categorizes, in the same way I gave you before, innovation, human capital, and the knowledge that altogether create an added value for society. And then you can play with plots and trying to see if you balance the global financial costs, which are, of course, largely monetary, and the local costs, which are in part economic, but in large part simply the impact of having a big laboratory around on a space. And so I would just skip this part because it's largely things that I have told you. I only come to the one last point, because the word sustainability, I played it all on how you justify the fact that you are actually spending, but what people want to see, and we also want to see, is that we also try to reduce our footprint, let's say, of consumption. And there are many things that we can do, because big science is big cost, in particular of things like power. Our laboratory, CERN, use immense amounts of power. How do you cut it down? Well, there are many things that one can do. You can improve how smart is your use of the accelerators. We have now people developing AI to try to optimize the use of accelerators, the expanded use of superconductors, new accelerator technologies, limiting the energy consumed for computing. I told you about this big breakdown on the cooling, but there are many, many, many things that one can do in reducing the overall amount of computing power that one needs to use. And the patient exam of many, many smaller aspects, we have realized that we can save about 100,000 euros per year in electricity bill, changing the lamps in our experimental halls. That seems funny, but it is actually, in the end, it does have a concrete impact. So we are unique opportunities for science, produce advanced technologies that can have enormous societal impact, and there are unique tools for the next generations, and are a fundamental vehicle of international cooperation, but also they need the international cooperation for being realized. That's it. Yeah, we have another.
Thanks a lot for the nice talk. I have only one short question about the new acceleration or new accelerators technologies. Did you consider laser plasma accelerators? Have you some of them?
We not in the use. Our main accelerators are, let's call it traditional, but we do have a whole line of development. Actually, we have one of the nicest lasers in Europe. We have one of the few, actually the only petawatt laser, which is a user facility, where one of the activity is laser acceleration. It's a beautiful development, not available on the time scale at which we need these accelerators, but for the future, it is definitely a development line that is pursued. Yes.
And concerning the high pressure inside the planets, what are the techniques you are using? Is that diamond anvil cells, for instance?
Diamond cells,
okay.
And then you create the plasma, you deposit the energy with the ion beam, which has the unique feature at these energies and these intensities of being macroscopic. You can actually create a plasma which is millimeter size, which, well, if you seem to be you know there's several millimeters of a plasma like that is a big object. And then you can actually probe it in real time with, we have a proton microscope. So a very thin beam of protons that we use for the
with proton.
scanning.
Okay.
Yes, we use a proton microscope. So it's
thank you.
Yeah, it's a very cute. If I had a physics talk, I would include that for sure.
More? One more question.
Sorry, maybe this is not a fair question.
Go ahead, come on.
No,
We're
no,
among friends.
No, I saw on your slide something about the SSC in Waxahachie being canceled because of lack of
among
vision.
other reasons, but that was one of the
that was one of the reasons. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons which was written in the report, that the return on investment was not adequate. And there, I think it has been a fault also of the scientific community. We have not been capable of communicating to the politics, the full extent of the return on investment. It all depends on how you measure it. If you measure it in terms of startups and patents, we are dead. But it's not the way we create return on investment. You have to. There's been in the last several years a number of reports commissioned also by the European Physical Society and so on to really try to create a metrics that allows to measure what is the actual overall economic impact, which is often completely underestimated. One of the persons which were a student in my group a long time ago, not directly my student, created a little company which produced isotopes in France, who sold his company after 10 years. It was a startup to Novartis. You can look up Stefano Buono Novartis, and you will find for how much he sold it after 10 years. 4 billions. 4 billions is a lot of real money. So it means that the things we do, we typically simply don't market them, but and we are not very good in transmitting this information to the political side, but they have a lot of value for society.
I think they should take to the Science Trust project with APS.
Yes, for example.
Thank you, Paolo, for coming all the way to Varenna and give this nice talk. I have a question because we heard this morning about the initiatives that should be made by the societies, the institutions, the laboratories in terms of outreach to make people understand the importance of basic sciences for plenty of purposes. My question is, in your lab, we know a lot about CERN, and in your lab, what are the initiatives or even the structures that are used to this purpose? Do you have something equivalent to the Science Gateway or whatever, like at CERN?
Not at that level, to be honest. Science Gateway is a rather unique tool, which every other lab envies. Indeed, we try to continuously put more effort in at all levels. There are very, very many things which are done. I think I had somewhere a list in the things that I skipped quickly. which goes from talks to visitors to special events dedicated to young female students, for example. There is in Germany in particular, the number of girls which get into science is extremely small. So we're trying to present the opportunities which are in science and so on and so forth. We are now building a new school laboratory, which is not anything comparable to the Gateway, but it's that type of concept. And last but not least, I was mentioning to Angela before, one of our employees got a grant from the EU now exactly to work on issues of sustainability and so on. That is from the EU and will allow a couple of people to be hired that will be working specifically on that. So overall, yes, it's a priority. Yes, we do some work on this, not quite at the level at which it is developed at CERN. Also because
the time is finished.
Okay.
So let's thank our speaker again later on. And we have, okay. Hello, I guess it's afternoon for you, Mrs.
Oh, actually, the evening now.
Evening, okay. So, Junichi Yokoyama, who is president of the Association of Asian Pacific Physical Societies, will talk about promotion of physics in Asia Pacific toward sustainable development. The floor is yours, and you have in total 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the organizers inviting me for this opportunity. And I am very sorry that I cannot come in person because still Japan is in the teaching term, and I actually couldn't manage to travel to Italy during the teaching period, which continues 2 more weeks. But after that, I am planning to come to Trieste to attend the IUPAP centenary ceremony. So if you are interested in talking to me in person, let us meet in Trieste in mid-July. So today, I'd like to introduce the promotion of physics in Asia Pacific through our activities as Association of Asia Pacific Physical Societies. So let me first introduce what APPS is. So APPS was established in 1990 on the occasion of the 4th Asia Pacific Physics Conference in Seoul, Korea. And it is aimed at being one of the 3 major physics associations in the world, comparable to American Physical Society and European Physical Society. But actually, it's a sort of dream story, even now, after 30 years of development of APPS. And the first president of the APPS was Nobel laureate Chen Yan, and vice president was Michiji Konuma, who became a second president. And in the beginning of my term, there are 18 member societies as shown in this maps. But now, earlier this year, Uzbekistan has joined. And very recently, Pakistan has joined. So we now have 20 member societies. So yesterday we heard that IUPAP has 60 members. And so it really shares some 1/3 of the world, even though some of our members are not members of IUPAP. So anyway, we are sort of occupying some significant fraction of the world of physics. And this is a list of the 18 member societies at the time of the previous council election, which happened 2020. And those countries or regions marked with yellow have sent council members. And those with blue stars, Beijing, or 2 societies in Japan, Korean Physical Society and Physical Society located in Taipei, sort of major societies because they are providing extra support to APPS on top of the annual membership fee, which is very low, actually. It's only $500. Okay, and the headquarters is hosted by APCTP, and it is located there. Well, APCTP is the Asia Pacific Center for Theoretical Physics, which exists in Pohang, Korea, as seen in this map. And it was established in 1996 after being endorsed by APPS in 1994. It has been conducting a number of educational and research activities to promote physics in Asia Pacific. And so we have the same scope to have prosperous Asia Pacific in terms of physics. Now, our main activities include publication of APPS bulletin, organization of Asia Pacific Physics Conference, which is held every 3 years. And the most recent one was held in Borneo in November 2019. Just before COVID pandemic. And also we are sponsoring other conferences, and we have organized some joint activities, European Physical Society, which has been suspended now due to COVID. And also we are awarding Chen Yan Award for young scientists with less than 10 years after PhD in cooperation with the APCTP. And also we have now 4 divisions in some various expertises, and I will introduce them later. And now the publication of APPS Bulletin, this is a bi-monthly journal, and the editorial office is also at APCTP, and we have both online version and printed version. So it was originally aimed at to be a Physics Today in Asia Pacific. But now, since last year, it has been published through the cooperation with Springer Nature Company and with the financial support from APCTP, and printed version with the support from 4 member societies. And now it's online version. It is like this. And it has been published as a fully online journal. And we are now publishing invited review articles as well as accepting submission of original papers. And now our editor-in-chief is trying hard to make it a sort of high impact factor journal. Yeah, these Chinese or Korean people like this kind of numbers, but Japanese member societies do not like the idea because they have their own journal and struggling to increase the impact factor of their own. Now, the Asia Pacific Physics Conference, which is our General Assembly, and covering all fields of physics. Actually, APPC itself has longer history than APPS. Because, APPS was established at the time of fourth APPC. So when it was held in Seoul, as I mentioned before. And now the last one was Kuchin, and it was a quite successful meeting because this was the first time 3 of our divisions organized their own sessions. And back in 2013, at the time of APPC 12, that was held in Japan actually, and 400 plasma physicists joined that meeting and actually occupied 1/3 of the total participants. And that led to the formation of the first division of APPS, namely the Division of Plasma Physics. Now we have more divisions, plasma physics and astrophysics and nuclear physics divisions. So all of them organize some sessions there. Now the next APPC 15 was being planned to happen in August this year in historic city of Gyeongju in Korea at this very nice fancy international conference hall. But unfortunately, due to still prevailing COVID-19, it was decided to be held as a free online conference. Yeah, because unlike in Europe, we have not really opened the border yet completely. And it is very difficult to get together in Korea from all over Asia Pacific. But as a part of next APPC 15, we are planning to organize a meeting, the role of physics in the green economy, on the first day of our conference. And the provisional program of speakers are as shown here. And we have a discussion on climate change, solar cells, etc., towards the green economy in the same scope as the International Year of Basic Science for Sustainable Development. So this is one of our activities towards this sustainable development. And another conferences we are supporting or sponsoring is the one in Nepal earlier this year. It happened in January. As you know, Nepal is a least developed country in Asia Pacific, but thanks to this online media, we have managed to organize a very highly international conference at Nepal, and many local people attended, as well as you can see many international names in the program, not only from Asia Pacific, but also from Europe or United States as well. So this was a very nice event to promote physics in Nepal. And from tomorrow, we are going to sponsor the Sham Physics Congress 2022 being organized by Thai Physics Societies, but APPS is supporting this conference, sending plenary speakers, Professor Segawa and Ihara, both of them are members of the Japan Society for Applied Physics, because the main topic of this meeting is carbon neutrality. Again, this is highly related with sustainable development towards the green environment. Okay, now next I introduce ASEPS, which is Asia Europe Physics Summit. And in fact, this meeting was started as an initiative of European Physical Society, because EPS has a similar structure as an association of physical societies, although they have individual members as well. And ASEPS is a joint symposium between APPS and EPS. The first one was held in Tsukuba, Japan, and the second one in Poland, and the third one again in Japan in association with APPC 12. And at that time, the president of APPS, Nagamiya, and president of EPS, John Dudley, signed the Chiba statement and to continue this event. And actually, the next one was planned in 2020 in association with the EPS conference of condensed matter physics division. But due to COVID-19, it was suspended and postponed to 2021. But again, still continuing COVID, we couldn't make it happen. But we hope to resume this meeting as a face-to-face conference in near future. Okay, let me turn to the division activities. So first division was division of plasma physics, as I mentioned. And this was established in 2013. And since 2017, they have been organizing annual conference, but in recent years, always online. And this year, again, online in October. But they are now publishing a review journal entitled The Reviews of Modern Plasma Physics, again with Springer, and also has some legal entity in Japan. Now, this is a breakdown of the participants of the last year's annual meeting of Division of Plasma Physics. They have attracted more than 1,100 participants, not only from Asia Pacific. Japan has the largest number of participants, and also China, but also from many people attended from United States as well as from Europe. So actually, by doing it online, we can more easily attract more people from all over the world. So indeed, this modern online conference system makes the world borderless. Of course, we do miss the real face-to-face meetings, but these online conferences are a way to sustainable development, indeed, to reduce the carbon emission. And this is a review of modern plasma physics. And now, Division of Astrophysics, Cosmology, and Gravitation, to which I myself was involved. And we have been organizing 2 conferences and 1 school on gravitational cosmology annually. And so we are contributing the education program in this region as well. And now, Division of Nuclear Physics, DNP. Actually, there is an association called ANFA, which is Asian Nuclear Physics Association. And that association is actually playing a role of the Division of Nuclear Physics. Their scope is to strengthen collaboration and to promote education and coordinate the existing research facilities and discuss the future planning. And now some of their members are conducting very important activities in Myanmar, to which I will return later. Okay, now our newest division is the Division of Condensed Matter Physics, DCMP. And so this is the newest division. And we have an Indian executive committee member for the first time in our divisions. And India is now used to be a sort of sleeping member of APPS, but now returning to our activities, which is very nice. And the first annual conference was held again online, but covering all fields of condensed matter physics. Actually, I thought to make a condensed matter physics division would be very difficult because at Physical Society of Japan, condensed matter physics is divided into 10 different divisions, and it would be very difficult to unify or unite all of them, but we have successfully managed it. But still, compared with the European Physical Society, which has 12 divisions, as shown here, and also that was introduced yesterday, our number of divisions is still much smaller, but nevertheless, now we are preparing the new division of particles and fields, and the division of computational physics is also under discussions. So in this sense, the APPS divisions are rapidly increasing, but still we have not reached a stationary state yet. But some of our existing divisions have mutual agreement with corresponding divisions, most notably for division of plasma physics, which has both relation to both EPS and APS. And our astrophysics division has actually longer history than the EPS gravitational physics division. And we sent a delegate to celebrate the inauguration of gravitational physics division of European Physical Society. And now, on top of these division activities, we have a Women in Physics group activities. And actually, as shown in these pictures, actually in some countries in Asia Pacific, this gender equality is not an issue. Yeah, indeed, some of countries have far more female physicists than male. For example, in Malaysia, 65% of the physicists is male, and Myanmar, even 95%. Actually, they are much fewer male physicists in Myanmar. Maybe the number is the opposite way around in Japan or Korea. Okay, so much is the division activities. Okay, and our problem is a huge diversity. Actually, this is a list of data which I collected in 2018 when I was the secretary of APPS. And not only the history and the number of people, but also the financial scale, as you can see from the annual regular membership fee in unit of euro. So some countries charge only a few euros annually, or even for lifetime. And so, as you can see from these figures, you can guess the financial scale of each member societies in APPS. And I actually, that is why most of these small societies are not members of IUPAP. And actually, not only diversity in size and financial scale, but also that in the stage of development and decline is also an issue. So let me take an example of Japan in order to consider how the social environment affects the sustainable development of physics. Although I do understand that the scope of this symposium as a part of IYBSSD is to discuss how we may achieve the sustainable development of the society, preserving the natural environment in terms of the knowledge of physics. So anyway, so let me consider opposite way around. So we may understand the problem the better if we see it from the opposite side. So Japan is actually the only country whose physical society has a competent history with Western counterparts. And also it has a unique society for applied physics. They say that that is the only one society in the world, but I found that Kazakhstan has also an applied physics society. And also Japan is the only founding member of IUPAP from Asia. So compared with DPG, which was established in 1845, or IOP in UK, 1874, Tokyo Mathematical Society, which is a precursor of now Physical Society of Japan, was established in 1877 and renamed to Tokyo Mathematical and Physical Society in 1884, even before the Società Italiana di Fisica was established in 1897, or American Physical Society was established in 1899, and IUPAP was in 1922. So to understand how this happened, I must touch some history of Japan, going back to the Edo period, which started at 1603 and lasted until 1868. And between 1634 and 1854, approximately more than 200 years, Japan was closed from international communities, and no international trade nor visitors. And so it established a sort of close to sustainable economic system. And during this period, no internal war and no international wars. So it was very peaceful. And people were poor, but lived in peace. And the population of Japan first increased like this, but then after that stayed constant for almost 200 years. So we established a stable economy with an annual growth rate estimated to be only 0.3%. So essentially the constant economy continued for 200 years. But during this period, there are a lot of cultural things, including science, and most notably mathematics by Seki Kowa, and who did some 11 digits calculation of pi and introduced a determinant and made some differential calculus. Actually, he solved some problem which cannot be solved without the knowledge of the differential calculus, but his formulation was quite different from the modern one. But anyway, after Meiji Reformation, modern Japan governed by the emperor, and we started catching up the Western civilization and introducing technology from Europe and US. Yeah. For example, in only 4 years after that, the government built at that time the world's largest factory that is called Tomioka Silk Mill, and now it's a World Heritage. And actually, this exists in my hometown, and caught up the technology from Europe and US. And so 5 years later, Tokyo Mathematical Society was established just from the tradition of Japanese style mathematics. But in this era was also, Japan developed significantly, but also the era of many wars. And until it was finally defeated and in 1945. And after that, we have some democratic country with a non-military constitution. So we didn't have to send any army to Korean War. And actually that stimulated our economy, which triggered to the rapid economic growth of 10% annually for almost 20 years until the oil shock happened. And even after that, so what is called bubble economy made the total price of land in Tokyo was more expensive than the entire land of USA. But after that, the economic bubble busted and continued. And since 1991, what is called the lost 30 plus years is continuing even now. And since 98, the zero interest policy has been adopted. So essentially no economic growth in Japan. And this policy actually itself has been adopted by many European countries and even US for some period. But anyway, since 30 years, there is no growth of GDP per capita in Japan and zero inflation rate for almost 30 years. Until very recently, after this Ukrainian war, which is triggering some inflation very recently. But not only rate of inflation, but our salary is also always constant for almost 40 years now. So Japan has realized that indeed stationary economy. But on the other hand, established sort of environment-friendly societies. This is a comparison between many countries about the consumption of oil equivalent energy to be required to earn the $1 equivalent of GDP. So Japan has the smallest number. So in the sense, our stationary economy established an environment-friendly societies. But not really sustainable. Yeah, because it has been maintained through the much larger government spending than tax income. So debt is increasing and increasing. And actually the debt balance divided by GDP has been increasing like this and actually exceeded the worst time during the World War II, more than 200%. And this was solved after the war in terms of the hyperinflation and property tax. And the same thing might happen in some near future in Japan, which scares us very much. And another thing we are facing is that the decline of the total population, or on the other hand, the increase of the old people, the fraction of age, those older than 65 years is already 30% and still expected to increase, even though the total number of population will continue to decrease. So actually, these two factors are severely affecting the physics in Japan. So the Japanese physics is now, I must say, that in a declining state. As you can see, that this is a evolution of the number of members of the Physical Society of Japan. And since 1996, it is decreasing more rapidly than the decrease rate of its population because the number of young people are decreasing more rapidly. And so social environment affects the sustainable development of physics very significantly. That is a big issue in Japan. But on the other hand, physics in Asia Pacific other than in Japan, is rapidly developing in both quantity and quality. This figure was given to me by the president of Korean Physical Society, and this is the number of registered members of their society, and increasing like this. And also, this graph shows the budget for spending for the science. So in Japan, for over 20 years, it's almost constant, only 15% increase. US and Germany about 80% increase, but Korea five times increase, and China 13.5 times. So rapidly increasing in other countries in Asia Pacific other than in Japan. So in this sense, we have a bright future in Asia Pacific. Okay, so now time is approaching. Okay, so let me change now the topic. Well, now we are facing aware that Ukraine is experiencing a difficult time, but it is not Ukraine, but in Asia Pacific, Myanmar, which is former Burma, which is located between Thailand and Bangladesh, is also facing difficulties. And actually, the transition from military rule to democratic government took place in 2011, and the democratic general election was held in 2015. And as you may remember, Aung San Suu Kyi won the election and came in the seat. But last year, there existed a coup d'etat on military rule again, and Aung San Suu Kyi is prosecuted. But in Myanmar, some of the Japanese members of the Division of Nuclear Physics of APPS have been supporting their physicists. As I mentioned, 95% of them are female, and organizing both lectures and experimental classes in Myanmar, and also they are inviting some of them to Japan for further education, even though Myanmar is not an APPS member yet. And actually, I also met some of them at the time of previous APPC in Borneo Island and have some communications. And after the coup, many people joined the campaign for civil disobedience called CDM to organize strikes and mass protests. And many university researchers joined this movement. And actually, they were fired by their new government. And some of them have even been prosecuted, and they are in trouble. But actually, those who did not join this disobedience movement are not free from difficulties, because universities are not supported by the new military rulers. And also, very sadly, there exists a division between those who participated in this disobedience movement and those who have not, even in this researchers communities. But our DNP members are organizing online education program due to COVID, and also the difficulty to visit there in this military era. And for both of them, actually, without any discriminations. And so I think such an education program without any discrimination is very, very important to achieve the sustainable development of our world. Okay, so much what I wanted to say, and let me conclude. So Asia Pacific region is experiencing rapid changes as a whole, and physics there is developing rapidly as well, both in quantity and quality, except perhaps in Japan. And Japan realized the stationary economy in the recent 30 years, in the sense of sort of stationary and non-inflationary one. But actually, this is not in a sustainable manner, unlike in Edo period, which lasted in a sustainable manner for more than 200 years with a lot of recycling. And this is severely affecting the sustainable development of physics in Japan, I must say. And APPS among them is also growing. The number of member countries and regions, and also numbers of divisions are increasing toward achieving the status of the one of the three poles of the world physics. And finally, divisions and discriminations must be overcome to achieve sustainable development. So I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. May I bring to your attention, I saw in the slide which listed the society, the oldest society in Europe. You seem to miss the oldest one.
Oh.
Which is Italian, is the
I'm very sorry.
Accademia dei Lincei, which was funded, which was started in 1603.
Okay, so
it's by far
57 years.
The oldest is by far.
Thank you very much. Okay, next time I will write it.
Very good.
Very sorry.
And I have another curiosity. In your society, Asian Pacific, which encompasses many countries with different
languages.
Right. What language do you use as a
always English.
Very good. Okay. I was just wondering.
I see.
Okay, that was the privilege of the chair. Now let's see if someone would like. Okay, the EPS will.
Hello, Uniki. Luc Berger speaking. So I am the current president of the European Physical Society. And I wanted, to congratulate you for this very nice presentation about the Association of the Asia-Pacific Physical Societies. Thank you very much. And also thank you for reminding us, the many collaborations we had in the past, and we will go on having these kind of collaborations in the future, I hope.
Yes.
As you know, you showed us that the number of your divisions and groups is increasing.
Yes.
So we should think about developing more collaborations between different divisions and groups, between the EPS and the IAPPS, of course, not only limited to plasma physics divisions or condensed matter divisions. This is one point. And I wanted to return to the successful series of the Asia-Europe Physics Summit.
Right.
Yes. Thank you for reminding, this initiative that was launched by my predecessor during the past decade. And you recalled, the KIBAS agreement signed by John Dudley. And indeed, we had this pandemic stopping our exchanges. And you wrote us an email in September 2021 in order to relaunch this initiative. Of course, it is necessary to continue the series, which was really successful. So my availability is yours if you want to discuss how we can relaunch this initiative in 2023. We need to do that. So we can organize an online meeting to decide how to do and how to connect better our divisions and groups. And please believe that I'm ready to discuss, the terms to organize something and to relaunch this process. If it is necessary for you to have me in Kiba for a second signature, I can come, no problem. But please, let's keep in touch. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Another question.
Hello, this is Ani Abrahamian. Thank you very much for the very nice talk. I had a question about the two countries that had a predominance of women in physics. I was wondering if there was some information as to how that happened. or is
All right.
physics, and what areas of physics are they following?
Oh, okay. So in Malaysia, why the number of female physicists is large is because, yeah, men are more attracted to more application-oriented science, like engineering or medicine. And physics is a sort of, the fundamental science. So male are more oriented to the application, and with which they can earn more money, for example. Yeah, that is the reason in the case of Malaysia. And in the case of Myanmar, it's even more straightforward. So men are at labor work, and females are on brain work. That is why there are much more female physicists in Myanmar. This is what I heard from our DPP members.
He said the men are in labor work and the women
Right.
are in brain work.
Brain work, yeah.
That's true all over the world, but not so obvious.
Right,
Thank you
yeah,
very
that's
much.
very interesting.
Thank you. I would love to get a copy of your talk, actually.
Okay. More questions? No, we do not have more questions, but we thank you very much for your informative presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope to see some of you at Trieste next month.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, if any of you are coming.
Okay, so see you in Trieste. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
So we have our organizer wrapping up.
First, I think, as you can imagine, I really want to warmly thank you because you did a great job. Also, the participation was very active. And since I started the meeting, this symposium, I think I like now Luisa say a few words, and then also Joe. And then I think we show the picture of that we took yesterday. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. So apart from thanking all those who stayed until the end, the idea was not to make a conclusion, but to say a few words of final reflection, maybe. And of course, we're here to discuss science and science diplomacy and science policy. And we were a small community, but I think nicely, as you can see on the picture, nicely sticking together, staying the unity of the community as stressed by many of you is important. And we were discussing global challenges, a number of them, not all, of course, in terms of sustainability. And our global challenges in science were, I must say, mostly in physics. We didn't discuss any other aspects of science, but we have identified a number of them. We have seen that we have global challenges on the Earth, in space. They range from environment to climate, to energy, to health, society, education, and maybe I'm skipping many more. And to address this issue, we have understood that we must not only identify, let's say, natural resources, but also intellectual, scientific, and technological resources, social and economics. So it's a wide range of things we have to identify and work on. And we must take advantage of our basic sciences and research in basic sciences because they have a tremendous potential of innovation, no matter the definition, the strict definition of basic science, because they all lead to a tremendous impact and to very many applications, which can be direct, indirect, sometimes immediate, sometimes delayed, sometimes totally unexpected. So we really must understand that we have a strong responsibility. And this is why, as a community of physicists here, we should keep nurturing our passion for science, as the title of the symposium clearly highlighted. And we have a responsibility also to transmit this passion to the young in a spirit of open collaboration that was said plenty of times. And I think this holds true in particular in these difficult times of war. So this is all I have to say. And of course, let me thank the president of the Italian Physical Society for having hosted us here for these 2 very nice days. Thank you.
Well, I just wrote it down a few words, but I didn't bring my glasses, so I can't read them. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, really going to make it brief. No, really, it's. I was here in 2013. It was a fantastic Passion for Light, but this was really extraordinary and nice meeting. I really learned a lot. I mean, I really did, and I think it's a great participation. And thanks to Angela and Louisa for that. So I just want to make a couple points, and I think just reiterate, scientists are not going to solve society's problems. No, we're going to help. It takes the whole society to solve a societal challenge. So for that reason, we have to learn how to talk to the others. And so we need to do things like go into the science trust, and things like that. We need to talk to the others. We're not going to do it by ourselves. That's fun. And the other thing is young people. We need to, involving young people, giving them some responsibility. Sometimes I just don't see enough young people getting enough responsibility early enough. It really helps them. It helps our cause because we're going to get older and we're going to lose energy. But the young people, got to get the pipeline filled up. So anyway, that's all I want to say. But thanks again, and it was really wonderful. Thank you, Angela.
I just want to add that we have a web page with all the talks. I think we might ask you if we give us the permit to do it. And also all the presentations will be on YouTube because they were streaming. And so if you miss something or you want to, let's say, advise or some of your friends to see something, you can do it. Okay. So thank you very much again. And I think now we have a good lunch again, and then have a very safe trip home.